Wayne's website is wayneperry.com. So Wayne is going to bring us into a sound medicine meditation. Wayne, are you there?
I'm here.
Beautiful. Yay. Great. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you.
All right, you got the floor for 45.
Okay, so are we starting the meditation right away, or
No,
what?
no, you got 45 minutes to talk, introduce, and do your meditation. You got the floor for 45 minutes.
So we're doing the meditation at the end of it?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay.
Whatever you want.
Well, I just like to talk about sound therapy principles, since we live in this vibrational universe. Everything is sound, and one thing that we all should remember, and that's the fundamental physics principle, is that the form and density of all matter is determined by its frequency. I'm going to repeat that because it's very important. The form and density of all matter is determined by its frequency. Now, the matter that probably concerns us most is the human body. Even though we're talking about all matter, we're directly relating to our body and want to keep it in optimal health and wellness. And there's no better way to do that than sound therapy, since our bodies are literally made of sound. Now, some people don't quite get what I'm saying when I say your body's made of 100% sound. But, I think, like me, you probably learned in elementary school, like I did. The teacher said, boys and girls, did you know your body are 70% water and 30% solid, just like Mother Earth? The Earth is also 70% water and 30% solid, and so are your bodies. And we nodded and thought, wow, that's interesting. We're mostly water. And on one level, that's true. But in terms of the new physics, there's really no such thing as solid matter. You can delete that word solid or solidity or solids from your vocabulary, because it's an illusion. There is no such thing. The new physics has shown that everything is in a state of vibration. And the lower the frequency, the more density, or the more appearing solid it is. But like I said, solid is not a legitimate word. The correct word is density. So the more density, the lower the frequency. So if you're looking at a table or a chair or a wall or a floor, you're talking about such low density, such low frequency sound, it's way below the hearing range. And so you can't change the form or the density without virtually destroying it. So let's look at our body, and let me explain to you how our bodies are 100% sound, so then you can in turn use sound to heal anything. Any physical or emotional illness can be corrected and healed with sound therapy. I've been doing this for 28 years worldwide, and my book, Sound Medicine, is rated 5 stars, on Amazon. Of course, I prefer that you buy it from my website rather than Amazon. Instead of feeding the corporate monster, support your local healers and craftsmen and whomever. WaynePerry.com, my name is my website. You can learn a lot too. There's a lot of free to view videos there, blogs, articles, my calendar, all sorts of good things. But anyway, getting back to the topic of our bodies consisting of sound. So what has the most density in the body? If it helps you to think in terms of solidity, you can, knowing it's an illusional word. So to answer that question in the interest of time, if you used your logic and reason accordingly, then you know that you're certainly not your brain. Your brain is almost entirely liquid, but your bones and teeth are the lowest density, has the most density, and it's the lowest frequency of sound in your body, which is 100% sound. So the bones and teeth, in fact, if you want to be real left-brained about it, the lowest frequency absolutely is the enamel on your teeth. The tooth enamel has the exact most density and is the lowest frequency of sound in the body. Now, if you step it up, in the interest of time, I'm just going to lump it all into 3 categories. There isn't time to go into the frequencies of every body system here, but this is what we do in sound therapy. It's very, very specific to each individual. Just like I said earlier that the form and density of all matter is determined by its frequency. Well, with the human body, every person has their own unique frequency. No two people are alike. It's like a sonic fingerprint. So I do diagnostic brain, voice, sound analysis, and I chart out a person's personal frequency pattern so that we can apply sound therapy very specifically to the individual. That's the only legitimate kind of sound healing. Much like, or much different from 28 years ago when I opened up the first sound therapy center in California, people laughed. They didn't understand brainwave entrainment or sound therapy or any of the physics principles involved in proper sound therapy. But now things have changed, but it's good news and bad news. The good news is people are starting to understand, maybe not everybody in the mass media, but most people understand that everything is energy now. But most people haven't connected the dots in the sense that it's not just energy. You could say sound, frequency, pulsation, vibration. We're all talking about the same thing. And so it's just different facets of the same diamond, so to speak. So when you measure these pulsations or vibrations of sound, it tells you how frequent it is. And so when you're looking at how frequent sound vibrates, that tells us the frequency. Frequency is measured in cycles per second or hertz. You see Hz indicated in a book or papers. Hz stands for hertz, from Wilhelm Hertz, got the publicity. They use HZ from his last name, Hertz. But you could also see CPS sometimes, which is cycles per second. It's the same thing. So everything is vibrating at cycles per second or hertz. But the hearing bandwidth that we hear is only from about 14 or 15 hertz up to 20,000 hertz. That's the human hearing bandwidth. Any sound below that is subsonic sound. Sounds above 20,000 hertz are ultrasonic sounds. So most sound is beyond the hearing range, but much sound is within the hearing range. So getting back to the analogy of the human body, so the bones and teeth you don't hear, it's subsonic sound, but it still is sound. But you can't change the form and density without breaking the bone or tooth because it's such low density sound. Now if we step it up and lump everything in the second category, the muscles, organs, skin, in the interest of time, let's just put everything in the second category. Now, you have a little more malleability with the organs, muscles, skin. A massage therapist works out the scar tissue, for instance, and muscles to relieve pain and tension and stress. So there's a certain amount of malleability to the muscles. You can stretch the skin a bit within reason because it's higher frequency sound. But your body is 100% sound. And so all the organs and tissues of the body are vibrating at various different frequencies. Every body's system has its own frequency, the sum of which all these systems make up your personal frequency pattern. That's what we look at. We open up to do proper sound therapy to see which body's system is weak. So a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis reveals the state of your whole wellness. I can tell where you're strong and where you're weak physically, emotionally, vibrationally through a sound analysis, which is a must for anybody that's serious about doing sound work and sound healing. So I said there's good news and bad news. Well, the good news is people are aware that everything is energy, and if they study a little more deeply into that, you'll see that everybody has their own personal frequency. Everything has its own unique frequency. The human body is the highest frequency. That's why it's referred to as the top of creation. So if we make use of this, we can actually have God consciousness in this dimension. And that's what I love about sound. We can relate to it on the physical level, the emotional, the astral, the mental, causal, or spiritual. The spiritual part of the body is infinite. The soul, that's an infinite sound. That's the part of your sound body that's infinite. The rest of it is temporal or temperate. That we know the physical body will survive for approximately 100 years in this dimension. The astral, though, it's much longer, over 1,000 years. And then you get to deeper levels of consciousness in the inner bodies. You have different lifespans of the subtle energy bodies, up to 100,000 years. When you get into the metaphysical aspects of sound, there's a lot to explore. And this is why I'm passionate about sound therapy, is because I'm working mostly with the metaphysical aspects now. But I work with people with minor aches and pains to cancer patients. We've gotten remission from dozens of cancer patients. I've worked with minor aches and pains. It doesn't matter what it is because everything is sound and everything can be adjusted with sound therapy if you're doing it properly. But this is where the bad news comes in. The good news is everybody understands that everything is energy. But the bad news is, at least in California, I don't know about other parts of the country, like California, it's like everybody thinks they're a sound healer. Anybody reads a book or Google something online or whatever, and they learn a little bit about the power of sound healing, they get inspired, and then they consider themselves sound healers, but they're not usually certified and in such a way that they can do diagnostic as well as therapeutic work. If you're not doing diagnostic work, you're not a sound healer, not a sound therapist at least. And so, you need to understand both the diagnostic as well as the therapeutic principles of sound to do it properly. And so that's what we do at the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles, which I opened in 1992. Since then, I spend a lot of my time traveling the world teaching my workshops and private sessions, although during the pandemic here, we've gone online, and instead of being in Taiwan, where I should be right now, Taiwan and Hong Kong at this time of the year teaching there, I'm online here, and I just finished about 30 minutes ago my weekly workshop, which I do every Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific Coast time to teach people the proper methodology for proper sound healing. And you can learn these techniques in 10 weeks. I have a 10-week course, that 30 hours, you can get certification in sound therapy from the Sound Therapy Center of Los Angeles. If you do all 10 3-hour workshops, that's 30-hour training. You get a certificate and a free workshop included in that. But you can also do 1 or 2 workshops, and dip your toe in the pool and check it out. You don't have to do all 10. You can do any number you want. Just check it out on wayneperry.com/events. If you go to the events page, you can learn a lot about the various workshops I teach, and they're very easy. You can do them in the comfort of your own home now through Zoom with the new technology. But anyway, getting back to the analogy, and I was talking about the human body, we left off at the middle section where I kind of lumped all the organs and skin and muscles and everything in that category of higher frequency sound. So there's more malleability to the energy, but only it can be stretched and moved to some extent, but not totally. To go to higher frequency sound in the body, you have to go to the liquids and fluids in the body. The liquids and fluids in the body are amorphous. Now, this is a different kind of energy in the body. It's physical energy, but it's still sound. It's still 100% sound in the sense that, here's where it gets dicey. If I ask you, what's the form and shape? We know at the density, it's a higher density level, the fluids in the body, but what's the shape or form of it? Now, you might ponder that. What's the form or shape of my blood? Well, again, in the interest of time, since we're not doing call-ins here, I'll just answer it for you and say, when you're working with amorphous material like liquids, amorphous material takes on the form of the container it's in. So the only way you can really answer that question in terms of the blood and fluids and water in the body is that the form is determined by the skin and the skeletal system is what determines the shape or form. So for example, let's say you have a pitcher of water in your kitchen in your fridge. You take the pitcher of water out of the fridge. Well, the water is the shape and form of the water is the shape and form of the pitcher. Okay, you pour the pitcher of water into a glass. Now the shape of the water is the form and shape of the glass. So amorphous material takes on the form of the container. So just like the fluids in our body are contained by the skin and the skeletal system, the pitcher or glass holds the shape of the water. But let's say you pour from a pitcher of water onto your kitchen floor, onto the tile or linoleum floor, you pour half the pitcher of water onto the floor. What form will it take? Well, we don't know because it's higher frequency sound. With a bone or a tooth, it's easy to see and to understand when you're using the visuals. But when you use your visual on the sound and the form and density of water, well, the density is easy. We wash our hands every day with water. It doesn't hurt the water. It doesn't hurt our hands. We can put our hand right through water. So the density is such a high frequency of physical matter and physical sound that you can put your hands through it without hurting it. But the form is such that it takes on the form of the container. Now, if you poured that water on the kitchen floor, you don't know what shape it's going to take. It might make a puddle, it might make two puddles, it might make a string of droplets. So we don't know until we take action with that material. So it's the same thing with sound. We don't know the exact form and density until we tune into the frequency. And that's what a diagnostic sound analysis allows us to do, is to see the frequency, how strong or weak it is. And there's two things that can cause disease, pain, discomfort, and death in the human body. And those two things are too little sound, which is what happens at death, or it can happen with disease. It's weakened sound. So it's either too little sound, or the other frequency is too much sound. It's one of those two things causes disease and imbalance in the body, either too little sound or too much sound. So when I do a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis, I'm looking at the brain, I'm looking at the voice, because if it's in your brain, it's going to be in your voice. If it's missing or dormant in the brain, it will also be missing or dormant in your voice. It's not going to come through. So I chart out by hand with colored pens your particular frequency, your body systems, the physical, the emotional, and I chart all this out. And what I'm looking for, there's three categories of sound. The first one is the sound that's okay. That's healthy sound. That's healthy energy in your body. I'm not concerned with it. If it's healthy, we don't mess with it. That's fine. So, but it's the second two categories I'm concerned with. The second one is the weak frequencies that aren't generating enough vibrational energy to have healthy tissue or organs or whatever's going on in the body. It's deficient and it has to be strengthened. The third component and the last component is the excess sound. That occurs because the body is a self-healing mechanism. Your body can heal itself of virtually anything, but it has to be, addressed properly. And so when we look at the excess sound, it comes from the body's kicking out sound all the time, every day. It's adjusting, it's creating, it's healing itself, but it needs to be in a sound environment. Unfortunately, although the system of life is perfect, we're imperfect beings in an imperfect world. So we're affected by the air we breathe, the water we drink, the food we eat, not to mention the thoughts we think, the feelings we feel. All these things affect our personal frequency pattern. And so it interferes with the body's self-healing mechanism if we're not thinking pure thoughts, if we're not having pure emotions, eating pure food, drinking pure water. And this is difficult in the environment we live in. The air isn't pure, the water isn't pure. So everybody has some imbalance in their body. But some people are very slightly out of balance, and I can tweak them and twerk them very easily to get them into balance. Other people have greater imbalances. If you think of here's another visual, you can think of a seesaw. One end is on the ground, one end is up in the air. Okay, so you can think of the end that's on the ground as the frequencies that are weak and need to be strengthened. The frequencies up here at the top of the seesaw that's in the air are the excess frequencies that have to be released and removed from the body because that excess is causing pain or disease, just like the weakness. So to balance this, we strengthen with brainwave entrainment this end, and we bring this end, we strengthen the part that's on the ground that's weak to bring it up to where it should be. And then with toning release, with vocal harmonics and toning, we can release the blocked energy up here and start bringing this down and gradually down, and the ideal is to be in a balance. So my hands in this position is just a metaphor, a symbol of harmonic balance and homeostasis in the body. And this is our goal in sound therapy, to bring into balance instead of this, too much and too little frequency. And so we strengthen what's weak, we release what's in excess, so you come into balance. So that's just a little brief visual metaphor to understand a little bit about sound. The other beautiful thing about sound therapy is it doesn't take up a lot of time. It's not only the most effective holistic modality, and I've researched them all, from homeopathy, aromatherapy, massage therapy, you name it, whatever therapy and holistic modality is out there, I've experimented with it for over 30 years until I discovered sound therapy that covers it all and is the most effective holistic modality There is. Nothing even comes close to sound therapy because it's dealing with no middleman. When you're doing proper sound therapy using the ultimate healing instrument, which is the human voice sitting right under our noses. So every one of us is carrying the ultimate healing instrument right under our nose. The question is, are you using it? And if you're using it, are you using it properly? So that's one of the many things that I teach as a sound therapist, is the proper therapeutic voice, the proper therapeutic use of the human voice. And that's what my book is about, Sound Medicine. The full title of my book, Sound Medicine, is The Complete Guide to Healing with Sound and the Human Voice. Because there's no, and this has been researched, there's no instrument that even comes close to the human voice. I have 4 didgeridoos, I have crystal bowls, bells, tuning forks, shakers, gong, I have all that stuff. I rarely use it anymore. I mean, occasionally with certain people, it might help to use a little shaker or a bell or something to make a little frequency above or below the vocal range just to stimulate certain energy. But it's about maybe 5% of the time. 95% of my work is using vocal harmonics and vocal overtones because that's what's the most effective. And this has been researched by scientists that did testing on over 100 people, monitoring the body by using blood pressure fluctuations, oxygen saturations, proper oxygen saturation, and electroencephalograms monitoring brainwave patterns. And using those three criteria in the body to test every kind of sound imaginable, from musical instruments to all the things I previously mentioned, to industrial sounds, to music, to nature sounds, every conceivable kind of sound that you want to play with and try to use. And far and away, there wasn't anything that compared with the harmonics and overtones of the voice was number one. But you think these scientists would recommend to people to explore and study the voice and use the voice for the optimal healing? No, that's why I invested $4,000 in sound machines, because that's what I studied. Bioacoustics is the study of the frequencies that emanate from living organisms. And everything is sound, so the body is the highest frequency sound, the human body. And so I invested, over $4,000 in multimeters, sound machines, subwoofer speakers. And the first couple years of my practice, that's what I used until I realized, number one, sound machines are dangerous. And I heard some horror stories of some colleagues that harmed some people by giving them the wrong frequency with a sound machine. And that's the danger in anything electronic, can be super dangerous if you give somebody the wrong frequency. Now, acoustic instruments are much safer. You can use the bowls and bells and all that stuff. At least it's fairly safe, but it's just not as effective. It's only about a third as effective as the human voice. So why would you waste your time with these instruments like I did at one time when you got the ultimate healing instrument sitting right under your nose? So I switched over from using those, and then I had dramatic results, not only with myself, healing myself of kidney stones, healing myself of lung problems. I was on oxygen. I healed my lungs. I contracted hepatitis C. Doctors laughed when I said I could heal it with sound therapy. And they did all these tests and viral loads and all this stuff, and wanted me to take these pills, and they had no vaccine for hepatitis C, which I wouldn't take anyway. And eventually, I came in for my labs, my testing, and they couldn't find the antibodies. I mean, they couldn't. They said that we don't see the Hep C antibody, and we're going to do more testing. And I said, I told you I healed it. They did further testing. They couldn't find it. They never acknowledged that I healed it. But I got acknowledged to the back door because a few weeks after that, they started sending their patients to me because they didn't know what to do with them. And since I had healed it, they wouldn't cop to it, but they started sending me patients. They still send me patients. I've worked with doctors that have had hepatitis C. I do a sound analysis. I put them on some supplements or things like alkaline water, for instance, which everybody should be on if you want to protect yourself from the COVID virus. Hep C is a virus. That's what the doctors would say. Oh, you can't heal a virus with sound. You know, Hep C is a virus like herpes is a virus. Hep C is a virus. COVID-19 is a virus. It can all be healed with sound if people would wake up and do a diagnostic sound analysis. And the best, not only is sound therapy the most effective holistic modality out there, it's probably the least expensive. You know, you don't have to spend more than a few $100s on some downloads and a diagnostic sound analysis, and that's all you need. It's a self-empowerment process. You're not going to a healer to, you know, take care of your ills or your karma. You know, I don't call myself a sound healer. Other people call me a sound healer. I'm a certified sound therapist. And that's what I do. That's my profession, and it has been for almost 30 years. And I teach people and try to educate people in the proper methodology for healing with sound, because most people, 90% of people, are not using the proper modality. They're just, you know, treading water, so to speak. You know, you can use acoustic instruments and get a little bit of a slight amount of benefit, but nothing near what you can achieve with the human voice. Plus, there's still the danger of getting the wrong sound. It's much worse if you get it with a sound machine or electronic device like a synthesizer. You get the wrong sound. It can cause, you know, paralysis. It can cause pain. It can cause some severe problems. I know somebody on the East Coast that very likely, I mean, I can't say for sure, but very likely died, passed away, because he was in intensive care unit and he was given sound with a sound machine by somebody that didn't know what they were doing. You know, and so that's why my sound machines went into storage 27 years ago. You know, and I haven't used them since, because they're not only because they're dangerous, because they're not as effective as the human voice. And so I try to caution people to stay away from sound baths. You know, every week I've got to realign somebody's frequency because they went to a sound bath and got their frequencies all discombobulated. Now, if the sound baths have synthesizers in them, you're up for that real dangerous part, because it's electronic sound. If you go into a sound bath that's all acoustic, at least you don't have that danger. It's not going to kill you, but it might make you nauseous or dizzy if you get the wrong sound with an acoustic instrument. If you get the right sound, it could give you some mild benefit. But how are they going to know? That's the problem with, you know, the people doing sound baths get irritated with me because they think I'm judging them or trying to steal their business, which is not the fact at all. I don't judge anybody, but I have to judge behavior that has the potential to harm people. Of course, I'm going to judge behavior. I don't judge people. I have friends of mine here in Los Angeles that do sound baths, and they know how I feel about it. You know, I don't, you know, announce it on social media that they're doing, you know, but they, you know, I do talk about it in my Facebook lives, and if people interview me or whatever, I tell the truth about what's going on. And, you know, you may not be harmed with acoustic sound, but if you get the wrong sound that you have an excess of in your brainwave pattern, and since these people are not sound therapists, they're just arbitrarily putting out pretty sounds with bells and bowls. Well, first of all, pretty sounds aren't going to heal a tumor. It could be a very irritating sound to get rid of a tumor. You know, I work with cancer patients. I had a guy who was given 6 months to live with prostate cancer, you know, and he didn't know anything about alternative or holistic medicine, but one of my clients referred him to me. She was a friend of his, and he came to see me, and his peers gave him 6 months to live. 5 different doctors told me he had 6 months to live. That was it, nothing. So he was checking out all sorts of things. And when I did a diagnostic sound analysis, and I did a brief, like only about a 15-minute healing treatment adjustment for him. And at the end, he looked different. I mean, his cheeks were rosy, his eyes were brighter. I told him, look in the mirror, you can see the difference. You know, and his friend that was with him saw it immediately, and he eventually saw it. He didn't see it right away, but then he could eventually see it. And before he had come to see me, he had gotten on his way, on his journey, he had gotten a Kaplan photograph that had absolutely no color in the photograph, and it was one of the worst I'd ever seen, of course, because he had cancer. I also did in addition to diagnostic sound analysis, I did some dowsing. I measured his frequency, and I could see it was only this far out from his body. A healthy person, your vibrational field expands to at least 5 or 6 feet out from the body. And if you're doing toning regularly, it's going to expand farther and farther. See, these are things that the average person just isn't aware of and doesn't use. And so I suggested to this, and he was a doctor, by the way, Dr. Christensen, that had the prostate cancer. And I suggested he go back when he left to go wherever he got that Kirlian photograph done and get another one done after I worked on him, and he could see the difference if he didn't see it in the mirror. And unfortunately, I misplaced his phone number or forgot to get it, I don't know which, because I wanted to check with him in a week or two to see how he was doing, and I couldn't find his phone number. So, that happens from time to time. I see so many different people and talk to so many people on the phone, it's hard to keep track of everybody. People call me from Europe, Australia. I mean, I work internationally. But anyway, couple weeks later, I'm setting up for a conference at LAX Marriott by the airport in Los Angeles, and I was setting up my books and CDs and papers and stuff for the conference, and I hear somebody calling, Wayne, Wayne. I turn around, and it's Dr. Christensen, this old guy. I mean, he was in his maybe late 70s, something like that. He's literally running with something in his hand. And I said, Bruce? That was his first name. And he said, yeah, Wayne, I'm sorry I haven't been in touch. I wanted you to have this. And what he had in his hand that he was waving was a picture that the Kirlian photograph he'd gotten when he left my place. And the one he arrived with had like no color and had these orbs, 3 or 4 orbs around the body, which is a sign of ill health or entities. It's usually one or the other. It's either really negative energy being expanded and from out from the body, or some people feel it's entities. I don't work in that field of entities, but it's very possible, that it can be that. But anyway, it was a very unhealthy photograph. The one he brought me to show me after I did the session with him, and he went back there, it was just about 2 hours between the 2 photographs. But the second photograph had all this green light, bursting green light expanding from his body, that showed the healing energy and the love, that's like 4th chakra, the loving, caring, healing energy of the 4th chakra. But so he was like drowning in this bright green energy, and the orbs were almost gone. Instead of the 4 big orbs, there were 3 little tiny orbs that were, dwindling down. And I told him, you keep working on this stuff, you can get rid of this stuff and heal yourself. So he was convinced. In that couple of weeks between not seeing him, he had gone, checked out homeopathy and acupuncture and all these things, other alternative modalities, and then he finally decided, I think what you did made the most sense, and I got the most benefit for. So then he signed up for my workshop, did a reanalysis in about 2 months, because he didn't pass away in 6 months. He got remission from the cancer, and he went on for many, many years. He brought his whole family by, kids, relatives, to work with me, as most people do. Once they experience real sound therapy, people come, flocking to my door. But I'm about self-empowerment. It's not, I'm not a sound healer with some shingle on my door looking for sick people to heal. That's not how it works. Spirit does the healing as far as I look at it, but I understand the science of bioacoustics and how to work with the energies and the frequencies. As a sound therapist, you can release the excess frequencies that is dangerous with vocal toning and toning release work. And then you can do entrainment work by listening to harmonics, but you need to do it every day, at least for 5 minutes every day. But that's the beauty of sound therapy, because it doesn't interrupt what you're doing. We're all busy people. Nobody wants another 30 minutes or 60 minutes of homework to do every day. Who is going to fit it in their schedule? You wind up, like my mother used to say, throw the baby out with the bathwater, and then nobody does anything. And so that's why I help people by teaching them with metaphors and things that they can easily understand, scientific principles like brainwave entrainment, with a simple example. And so we use this with sound therapy. So one of the analogies I use is food. You can eat the healthiest food in the world. The highest frequency food is fruits and nuts and vegetables and seeds, and basically like a vegan diet. And I've been vegetarian since college, but I switched about 5 years ago to a vegan diet because it's the purest, highest frequency diet, and it just lightens your energy. So it's easier to use sound, it's easier to meditate. So anyway, it's just, I was looking at this fact, and I see the parallels between sound. You can eat the healthiest food in the world, But guess what? If you don't eliminate that food, you're going to die. And conversely, you can have the best elimination in the world. You can have great digestion, great elimination. But if you don't eat, you're going to die. Some very simple, obvious facts. So what goes into your body is important, but what goes out of your body is equally important. And it's the same thing with sound. This is why I use the analogy of food. The sound that goes into your body is the entrainment, is the sound that's going to correct the weak frequencies and strengthen your brainwave patterns where it's weak. And the sound that goes out of your body, the elimination, like the elimination of food, is your toning release. Why you need to tone regularly and release that energy. You know, I mean, we're given that gift anyway. God gives us that gift of making sound. When we moan, when we groan, this fits my definition of toning. Toning is simply using the voice to move energy, right? Using primarily vowel sounds, but not limited to vowel sounds. But we're just moving energy with the human voice. That's all toning is. Well, when we moan, we groan, when we raise our voice as we get emotional or excited, these are all indications of moving energy with the human voice. We don't call it toning, but this is something we do, we take for granted. When we laugh, we cry. These are the two biggies. The two biggest ways of moving energy is laughing and crying. You know how great it feels when we laugh. We used to do a laughing meditation in my workshop because laughing is so, you know, enveloping and healing. But so is crying. Now, crying may not be as pleasurable as laughing, particularly if we're crying over grief or a painful situation, physical pain or emotional pain. But you still know how good it feels when we're done. After we're finished crying for whatever hurt us emotionally or physically, we feel cleansed. We feel a great feeling of release afterwards. So going through the pain is worth it because we have a release. We reach another level of awareness and a certain level of healing from the release of that. But it's not, you know, what I would call full healing. It's more release work. Like I categorize sound in 3 categories, so it helps to understand sound better. I call them the 3 R's. The first R is relaxing sound. And this is what's going on in sound baths. This is what's going on in music that you listen to. The purpose of relaxing sounds is to calm and soothe the body. Now, we all need calming and soothing, especially with this frenetic, chaotic pace of life that we live in. You know, we all need some downtime to kind of relax. So relaxing sounds is the first R type of sound. Now, this could be sound in, or food out, you know, as the analogy between food and sound. So it can be the sound we listen to, or it can be the sound that we make with toning. So make sure you connect the dots. It could be sound in or sound out, but the purpose is relaxing sound, the purpose of which is to calm and soothe the body, okay? And that's helpful, but it's not healing sound. It's relaxing sound. Second category of sound, the second R, is release sounds. Release sounds, totally different purpose and intention behind release sounds. While relaxing sounds are to calm and soothe the body, release sounds are to cleanse the body. Just like we take a bath or a shower to cleanse the physical body, we use release sounds to cleanse the vibrational energy and the emotional energy in the body with release sounds. And the key to release sounds is what I refer to with my students as VVB. VVB stands for vowels, volume, and breath. So vowel sounds open up the voice the fullest to use the maximum amount of sound. Volume is necessary, and it's the only time in toning and sound therapy that you need volume is doing release work. Any other vocal harmonics, overtoning, toning, chakra balancing, you know, name toning, detoxifying, all the various exercises and tools that I teach, volume isn't important, isn't necessary. The one area that you need it is during release work, when you're using the voice to release blockages in the brainwave pattern, blockages to healing, you need some volume. Now, you don't want to strain your vocal cords. It's not primal scream therapy. Keep that in mind. But you need elevated volume. So people ask you, what level of volume? Well, it's about the volume that you would call your friend from across a crowded room in a party. If you went, Patty, Patty, Joe, you know, whatever, you're raising your voice. You're not straining your voice, but you're raising your voice. To call somebody from across the street or across a crowded room, Barbara, You know, it's about that volume. It has to be emphasized volume. If you had a bad pain in your stomach, right now, you got this bad pain, you're going to release it. You're not going to go, ow. Blase doesn't work. You don't just go, ow. If you got a pain, you're going to go, ah. You're going to express it with some prana, breath, and volume and sound. And so that's where the VVB comes. Vowels, volume, breath. That's what VVB stands for. So you're using the vowels because they create the most resonant vibrations of sound, the vowel sounds. And then you use volume because of what I just said. You have to raise the volume to move the energy. Now, it's easy to understand with pain, but it's still the same truth and principle. Even if there isn't pain, you might be releasing a tumor like Dr. Christensen had pancreatic cancer. He wasn't in pain, but he had pancreatic cancer and had to do release work to help release the cancer cells. And so whatever you're releasing, you can use volume. And then the breath, of course, we tend to take it for granted, just like we take our toning for granted. We don't call it toning when we moan, groan, laugh, or cry. But all these things will help facilitate our healing, our self-healing and self-empowerment when you resonate with the proper sounds in the proper way. So when you're doing release work, you're releasing blockages and you're cleansing the body. Unlike relaxing sounds that calm and soothe the body, sometimes we're doing release sounds. Now that's the sound we make. What about the sound that comes in? Okay, we're making release sounds with the voice, some vowels, volume, and breath. So what about the sound that comes in? Well, another analogy or example I'll use is if you went to the gym to work out. You go to whatever, Gold's Gym or LA Tracks or wherever you live, whether there's a gym to work out. If you go to work out on using weights or machines or whatever exercises you're doing, when you come into that gym, you don't hear pretty relaxing ambient sounds like Yanni or Kitaro or solo piano or something. No, when you go into a gym, what you hear is boom, boom, boom. Another one bites the dust, or some kind of rock song or dance song. That's what you hear when you go into a gym, because the sounds that they play in a gym where people are working out have to be appropriate to release sounds. You're releasing endorphins, you're releasing energy when you're doing exercising, similar to if you're doing toning release. You're releasing black emotional energy. But that's the sound that goes out. So the sound that comes in, you can use that example if you're going to the gym. You don't hear relaxing sounds. You hear bump, thump, thump, thump. You hear dance music or rock music. That's what you hear in a gym. So this gives us a clue. That's release sound. When you're listening to aggressive music, it doesn't have to be music. It could be anything. But it's release oriented. So that's release sound. So that's the kind of sound that you would listen to that helps facilitate release. And when you do it vocally, use VVB, vowels, volume, and breath. And then you can go even deeper. Once you have your sound analysis, then you go VVB P for pitch, because then you know which notes and what pitch and which frequencies are weak or blocked in the body, which you need to know. Otherwise, you're just doing it generally, which is okay, because generally will help you to some extent. You can use it when you're driving in the car. You can do some A, E, A, O, U, A, E, A, O, U. That's release sounds, vowels, volume, and breath. You just do a simple exercise like that, and you'll get some release from the stress of being stuck in traffic. I do that, or the chakra chant, which is one of the things I teach in my chakra toning workshop. So those are the things that I do myself, and I teach my students to do, to just release blocked energy. But again, these are the first two R's or types of sound. We still haven't even gotten to the healing sound. These precipitate healing. They're important to understand and use relaxing sounds because they calm and soothe the body, and we need calming and soothing sometimes at the appropriate time. Just like release work, the second type of sound, the second R, release sounds. Whether the sounds we make or the sounds we listen to, we need to release sometimes. We need to take a shower from time to time. You need to release blocked energy that's stored in the body and in the brainwave patterns, with release toning and release sounds. Now, the third sound is the real healing sound. So these other sounds help facilitate the healing, and they work with the healing sounds. But the third R stands for regenerative sound. Regenerative sound is the real vibrational healing sound of harmonics and overtones. And that's where I discovered that this sound machine that I invested over $4,000, the reason they were marketing the machine and pushing it is because they didn't have the knowledge to use the voice. So what did they do? They created a machine to replicate the waveform pattern of the human voice. And that's why this is the most popular and effective sound machine on the market. If you want to waste your time with sound machines, it's better than the Tesla coils, the Royal Rife generator from the 1930s, all the stuff out there that's been used and experimented with and for many, many years. All these, modern scientists, all they did is they took a machine and they knew that the human voice was the ultimate healing instrument because they did the research. And they tested people with the electroencephalogram of the brainwave pattern and oxygen saturation and blood pressure. And they knew the human voice was the most effective. But instead of teaching the voice, which they didn't know how to do, which has now become my job and responsibility, is they put it in a machine so they could make lots of money selling $4,000 sound machines. So the waveform pattern of the human voice is unlike any other waveform pattern. If you look at an oscilloscope, which there's an oscilloscope, you see them in TV and the movies, it's that little machine that shows if a person flatlines, if there's a sine wave pattern, they're alive. When it flatlines, we know they're dead. We learn that without any medical education, just from watching TV and movies. Okay, but there's a lot more to an oscilloscope than that. An oscilloscope shows the waveform pattern of different instruments, musical instruments, electronic instruments, whatever it is, it shows the waveform pattern. So these scientists were smart. They experimented with different machines and different waveform patterns. And they tried a machine making sawtooth wave patterns to see if that produced any healing or effect on the body. And it had a minimal effect, but really not anything much better than sine waves, which have no healing power. Then they experimented with square waves, all these different waveform patterns. But it was only when they fell upon the waveform pattern of the human voice that they discovered the ultimate healing instrument. Because the human voice has what's known as a complex waveform in a standing wave pattern. What that means is it moves arbitrarily like this. It keeps changing. It looks kind of like a mountaintop range, but then it makes little jaggeds and then it makes big wave, and it keeps changing, just kind of like a mountaintop range with short and tall and medium-sized mountains. It just keeps fluctuating, and that's why it's called a complex waveform pattern in a standing waveform. And so what they did is they copied that. They saw this unique waveform pattern in the human voice from their testing, and they said, let's try and create a machine that creates the waveform pattern that mimics the human voice, and maybe it would be effective. And it was. It turned out to be the most effective sound machine on the market. But, they didn't talk about the dangers of the sound machine, which I keyed into. And when I heard some of the horror stories from some people, out on the East Coast using these sound machines, that's when my sound machine went into storage. I don't want to be responsible for hurting anybody. So that was one reason. But the other reason, besides the danger, is the fact that it was like number 4 in their tests of monitoring the human body with all their criteria and looking at the results. And number 1 was the harmonics and overtones in the human voice. A distant second was the acoustic instruments of the bells and the bowls and those outer tools that you can use. At least they had some effectiveness, but you have to know the frequency wave pattern of the person you're working with. If you don't know where they're weak and where they're strong vibrationally, well, you're just throwing food against the wall to see what'll stick and what doesn't. It's just a crapshoot. But if you can do a diagnostic analysis for people, then you could turn sound tests into something worthwhile that could help people. If you know where they're weak and where they're strong, you could use some of those acoustic instruments. But then again, it comes right back. Do you want to use something that's a third as effective, or do you want to use something that's 100% effective, which is the harmonics and overtones in the human voice? So that's why I do what I do. That's the research I've done. That's the practice. And all that I've learned in 28 years summed up in a few minutes to save you some time and money if you want to really get into true, genuine sound healing and sound vibrational therapy. And so that's a little overview of the diagnostics and the therapeutics involved. And, I could talk about the importance of brainwave entrainment, which is not that complicated and is vital. But I don't know how much time we have left here. I could talk about this stuff for hours. So I want to check in with Sheri here and see where we're at before I go any further.
Hi, Wayne, I'm here. Yes, we are running over, but and Audrey, it was supposed to start 5 minutes ago, but with everyone's permission, we could let you wrap up and let you do some toning. And Audrey can come on from 9 to 9:30, and she can also do a gallery tour. Is everybody okay with that? And you put in the chat if you want, it's okay that we could bring Audrey out afterwards and you want to continue?
Well, I don't want to take Audrey's time away from her.
Already did.
Oh.
Well, then I should go off of
No,
it.
it's fine. No, we're just on our own time. I didn't mean that to come out the way it did. I apologize.
Okay, so I want Wayne to do a little bit of toning, Audrey.
No, as I said, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, I could talk about the entrainment process, which is very important and is not really that complicated. Or I can demonstrate some regenerative sound. I can do whatever you like.
Okay, so everybody says it's fine. They're willing to stick around. So Wayne, let's do 10 minutes. If you want to do any kind of a vocal demonstration, I think it would be cool to do the chakra thing if possible.
All right, let me do about, you know, uh, 7 or 8 minutes explaining brainwave entrainment because it's very important. And then the remaining 2 minutes, I'll just do a brief demonstration of regenerative sound. So brainwave entrainment, first of all, the definition of brainwave entrainment is not very helpful in really understanding how brainwave entrainment works. The definition of brainwave entrainment is mutual phase locking of brainwave patterns. Now, that's an interesting statement, but what did you learn from it? Probably nothing, because I didn't learn anything from it when I learned what brainwave entrainment meant. It's mutual phase locking of brainwave patterns. Well, how does it work? How do you do it? This is what frustrated me. This is why I wrote Sound Medicine, because I read every sound book on the market, and none of them taught you anything. There wasn't that many books to begin with, but what that was out there I read, but none of them taught you how to do sound healing. That's why I wrote Sound Medicine, to teach you. That's why it's called the Complete Guide to Healing with Sound and the Human Voice, because it's got 48 exercises in it. I don't mess around. I get to the bottom line, to the truth, and teach you how to do it. And so now I want to explain to you brainwave entrainment. And again, it's a lot of times easier to understand these things with metaphors and examples than trying to use fancy clinical statements like mutual phase locking of brainwave patterns. Forget about that for now. And think about how music works and how a song stuck in your head. Think about songs that you remember from childhood. You've got songs, we've all got songs that stuck in our head from that old American chant, Old MacDonald Had a Farm. E-I-E-I-O. There's your first toning chant, Old MacDonald. We probably all remember that song. Or you could, think about Frère Jacques, dormez-vous, dormez-vous. We all remember that. And that's not even in English, it's in French. But when you get a repetition of enough energy, it doesn't even matter if it's a foreign language, it still sticks in our brain, because the secret to brainwave entrainment is repetition. Repetition over and over and over again. You just have to repeat the process. And this is what makes sound therapy so effective, is the repetition of the sounds that you need. But first you have to identify the sounds that you need. So that's why the number one, absolutely number one priority in working with sound is to get a diagnostic brain voice sound analysis. That's your first step. Then after that, you get a choice of working with some downloads, some vibrational downloads or books, or getting the knowledge of what to do now with your pattern. Now you know where you're weak and where you're strong, and now to work with it, you need some sound, which you can get from downloads of some harmonics, vocal harmonics. If you know how to create them yourself, all the better. That's one of the things I teach in my workshops. Then you can use your own vocal harmonics. But let me explain the analogy between music. What I'm talking about, that song that sticks in your head, you know, even without going back to childhood, a song that might stick in your head from last month. Okay, you didn't go to the park and sit down and say, well, you know, what's a popular song now by whoever, Adele, Bruno Mars, whatever. I'm not that into pop music, but like, let's say, you know, you have that song that sticks in your head. You didn't go to the park and sit down and practice it. You didn't sit down and, whether at home or in the park, you didn't say, well, let's see, the chorus goes up and then the bridge goes down and then the verse repeats. You didn't do any of that. You learned that song. That song stuck in your head for two reasons. And these are the two reasons. This is very important to know. The first reason that song stuck in your head is there's something in that song that your brain gravitated towards because you need it. There's a frequency that you're deficient in, that's weak in your brainwave pattern, that resonates with that song. So the brain is dispassionate. Usually we like the songs that stick in our head, but not all the time. The brain, all the brain cares about is it gets the food that it needs. It gets the sound, the vibration that it craves and that it needs. So if there's a frequency in that song, it could be the pitch, it could be the key of the song, it could be a primary note in the chorus. We don't know what it is. It doesn't even matter what it is. The point is, something in that song, your your brain is drawn to, it needs. So that's the first reason that that song sticks in your head, because your brain is drawn to it. The second reason the song sticks in your head is you've heard it more than 2 times. Song doesn't stick in your head hearing it once. With most people, it won't stick in your head hearing it twice. There might be a few rare examples, people with perfect pitch or strong musicality. It's possible that a song could stick in their head after hearing it twice. Most of the time, with most people, it takes at least 3 times, 3 or 4 times. So if you have these two conditions, one, the first reason is there's something you need in that song. That's why you're drawn to it. The second thing is going on is that it's stuck in your head because you heard it at least 3 times. You might have heard it in your car, didn't pay attention to it, heard it at home in the kitchen or in the restaurant, whatever. You heard it a few times. Combine that with your need for it, and it builds a groove in the brainwave pattern. That's brainwave entrainment. It's based on repetition. So with sound therapy, we use it for your favor instead of with music. You're never getting any healing from a piece of music. You might think you did. You heard this beautiful piece of music and you said you healed something, you felt healing. You should give your body the credit. The body is the self-healing mechanism, not the music you hear. The music on the radio is all corporate rock, corporate pop. It's made with computers. You know, look at the intention behind it. The intention was not to create that piece of music, wasn't likely to be to help your kidneys or your liver or your lungs or anything like that. More than likely, if the intention behind the music was to make $1 million or the writer to have more girlfriends, that's not going to help your health any. So we understand these things. With sound therapy, our intention is to help support you and help support the body. So we're using these entrainment principles in the proper way, not the way that these songs stick in your head and it doesn't do any good. And it's not just about what you like. Have you ever had a commercial jingle about some mattress commercial or deodorant or something, sticks in your head and you turn the station when you hear it, or you said, I can't get that stupid jingle out of my head. That's because your brain is dispassionate. Usually it's sounds that you like that will entrain in your brain. But sometimes it's a jingle like that will stick in your head because the brain doesn't care if you like it or not. The brain just wants the frequencies it needs. So that's what we do with sound therapy. We do a sound analysis. We identify what you need. We give it to you in vocal harmonics. I have recordings in all the frequencies, all the pitches and keys, so we can direct it exactly where you need it. And you listen every day because you don't have to stop what you're doing. You can listen to your tones. If you got 2 or 3 tones that you're weak, you listen to each one 4 or 5 minutes each day while you're driving in your car, while you're on the computer, while you're getting dressed. You don't even have to interrupt what you're doing because your ears are free. That's one of the wondrous beauties of sound therapy, is it doesn't even take up any of your time. You can train yourself and get the benefit of brainwave entrainment and sound therapy. So that's my little spiel on entrainment that I think is important enough to share with you, and I hope you'll take advantage of it. You might be wondering, about the toning part. I want to tell you that that is going to take a little time. So I don't want you to think sound therapy is totally, doesn't take up any time at all. The entrainment, the first half of it, the sound in, the food in, doesn't take any time because you can listen while you're doing other things. But the toning, you have to set aside some time. But if you can do at least 15 minutes twice a week, can you do a 15-minute vocal toning exercise twice a week? If you can, then you got the keys to success with sound therapy. I mean, that's the minimum, 15 minutes twice a week. It's better if you can do 30 minutes or 15 minutes 3 or 4 times a week. You know, it's up to you. You know, most people love toning and they don't mind doing it, but some people don't want to do anything that they have to do. You know, they're just undisciplined. So it's up to you. But I can give you the tools, you know, like they say, you know, not referring anything negative, but the old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water and can't make them drink. Well, I've learned that to be very true. Not that I deal with that many horses. My daughter's the horse trainer and works with horses, and I've taught her, done some sound therapy with her horses. I work with cats and dogs too, but that's a whole other workshop. So I want to leave a couple minutes here so I can demonstrate a little regenerative sound for you here. So we want to do that now. We will do that. So I'm going to demonstrate the difference between toning and overtoning. If I tone, I can send the sound through my mouth. It's similar to singing, but it's just singing a single note like ah, eh, ooh. You know, that's just a single note through the mouth. Now, I can also send a single tone through my nostrils. When we close the mouth, we call it humming, but it's still the same thing, only it's more of a muffled sound because it's not coming through the full armature of the oral cavity in the mouth. So it's a muffled sound coming through the nose, and it sounds, same note, sounds like mm. So that's a single note. Sounds different because it's a bit more muffled because it's coming through my nose. Now, I'm going to demonstrate, that's toning. Whether I'm doing it through my nose or my mouth, you could call it toning because I'm just moving energy with the sound. Ah. Okay, like we might do if we moan, groan, yawn, you know, sigh. These are ways that are gifts that we take for granted, just like our breath. But if we didn't make those daily sounds of moaning, groaning, laughing, crying that I was referring to early, our bodies would literally atrophy. You know, we don't realize God gives us a perfect opportunity for growth and healing. But do we use it? Do we appreciate the breath we take for granted, the bodies we take for granted, and the sounds that we make? These are gifts from Spirit, gifts from God that, you know, we kind of take for granted. But we should celebrate and appreciate. You know, I thank Spirit throughout the day, every day. I'm so grateful for this gift of sound. I mean, it saved my life a half a dozen times. There's no time to go into that now, but you can call me and I'll tell you all the things that I've healed and the various things that my clients and patients have healed. I told you about Dr. Christensen. But anyway, getting back to the demonstration. So I demonstrated a single note going through the mouth or the nose. Now, all overtoning is creating two tones simultaneously. The fundamental note and the overtone. Now, in musical parlance, they refer to this in the overtone series in a piano or a guitar. You know, you can learn about the overtone series with musical notes. But, you know, when we're talking about vocally, it's a little different. So I'm going to create the drone tone with my nose, the single tone, and then I'm going to bring the second note, which is the overtone, through my mouth. Then I'm going to go back to the single tone. I'm going to go back and forth between toning and overtoning so you can clearly hear the difference. Sounds like this. So all that is the difference between toning and overtoning. One tone and two tones. Now when you get into the depth of the exercises in my workshop, we get into 20 exercises to bring out harmonics and overtones where you can create two 3, and even 4 notes simultaneously. And so this is very powerful. So I'm going to end with this last final demonstration before I sign off, and with some more harmonic sounds. And I'm going to preface this with our meditation and then end with the sound. So please join me in spirit as I invoke and evoke the divine loving consciousness of the infinite spirit within, Father, Mother, God, infinite intelligence, and divine love, as a clear and open channel, with sound, light, and love as my guides. I ask that the sound of light now uplift us. May the light of sound now guide and direct us. May the love of spirit embrace and protect us. And finally, may the sacred sound of my soul resonate through us for the healing and harmony of all. So before I make these tones, if there's anything you need to release, transform, or heal, hold it in consciousness and release it into the light. Imagine a beautiful violet light before you with your eyes closed, and anything that comes up, release it into the violet flame to be transmuted to a higher frequency. Don't release it into your neighbor or your cat or dog or yourself. Be consciously responsible. Release it into the violet flame to be transmuted. And I will begin some regenerative sounds. Namaste. So, I don't know if there's anybody on the line or any feedback to get from people, but
Yes, Wayne, we have a lot of people here, but everybody's muted. That was awesome. I went through so many emotions. You made me giggle, you made me laugh, you made me cry. That was wild. That was cool. Everybody, write in the chat, what did you think about that experience? He teaches this. That's how I met him. Is I took one of his toning classes. I thought it was quite fascinating. Everybody want to write anything in the chat? You enjoyed his session. Great. Wayne, that was amazing.
okay, well, thank you for giving me an opportunity to share my life, my work, my truth, my sound, light, and love. And I appreciate it. I live to give, and I do these workshops every Saturday at 1 p.m. Pacific Coast time. And I encourage you, I should probably give a plug for my book. That's my book, Sound Medicine, if you're not familiar with it.
Hmm.
If you are interested in the 48 exercises contained in Sound Medicine, you can get it at wayneperry.com, my website, along with a lot of useful information on the website that you can learn a lot. The free to view videos and a lot of articles, a lot of testimonials and stuff. So play around, explore it, see what you think, and I try to be accessible. You know, you can reach me by keep the phone number and email on my website. A lot of people take it off their websites. I had to take my address off because I get people coming over without an appointment. But my address and I mean my phone number and email is there. If you have any questions, I answer the phone. I don't have anybody screening my phone. You can call anytime, day or night. Sometimes I sleep in the daytime when I'm working with people in Australia, New Zealand, and Hong Kong, and Shanghai, and some of these places. And then I'm working locally. I sleep at nighttime, so don't worry. You can call anytime. And if I don't answer the phone, I'm with a client or sleeping. But I'll always get back to you. So I'm pretty accessible. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And be well. And like I say, as I end my workshops, love you I. Put God first, God is love, and put the beloved next and yourself last. So I teach my students to say, love you I. That's why
Love
we
you.
put
I
God first,
love it.
love
Love you.
you I. Until next time.
Hashtag love you. I. Right